So colleagues, thank you so much again for the opportunity to share and learn with you in the two-day conversation. So I think my reflection on best practices to implement at our universities to foster the engaged scholarship in relation to its intellectual, scholarly, and programmatic propositions is that I suggest that we have to demonstrate this behavior in our own praxis as leaders or champions of our various engaged approaches. And for ourselves and even in the engagement office is then being able to demonstrate those key organizing principles that I spoke about that informs our reimagining approach to engagement. The first one of convergence is how are we demonstrating as colleagues in the space? How are we coming together? How are we allowing different knowledges to be heard and validated, or even though they might be contested knowledges on similar phenomena? This notion of reciprocity because of the scarceness of resources in supporting this mandate both effectively and efficiently. How solidaristic are we in our own practice in helping colleagues, in supporting colleagues in various ways, in giving up some of the institutional privileges that individuals we might have as we try to stretch very limited budgets, and then in outputs, sometimes recognizing that at one stage of or as part of the process, we might not actually get what we intended to, but we still remain supportive of that. So I think those three key organizing principles is essential in how we think about the work at Nelson Mandela and then how we demonstrate the work. Then on the second point on reflection on the insights from day one, I think again, in the engagement community generally, there seems to be a strong willingness to share and learn. I think that's some values I think we must continue to hold dear, and we must actually deepen that as we seek greater collaboration with one another. And a lot of patience, I think, is part of this, because I think even amongst ourselves, we might not have the same philosophical or methodological synergy. But I think what we're learning in our space, all synergies matter. It's in how you carefully collaborate and facilitate those synergies. So I think that was my big takeaway of yesterday, and then really not reinventing the wheel, but building off existing architectures, ideas around how to position engagement almost on an equalizing foot as the other two engagements within the space. Then suggestions for around how we could take the processes of solidaristic forms of work together. I think the one major contribution we can and we should be making as an ongoing process is Chris Brink's question is, what are universities good for? I think I want to proposition that to consider a statement which says, what should the engagement mandate be doing to help universities clarify what universities are good for? Because I think that can make a significant contribution in also helping our institutions clarify how they could better serve a world that is faced with so many contemporary and historical challenges of sense making as we try to co-construct a more socially just world using a variety of approaches and thinking. And the last proposition is a more concrete one, is for us to consider a joint project around a specific thematic, and then using all this learning, this calabash of knowledge, and then co-construct something that could then be explored in the various spaces where we are. Thank you, Prof. Devat.
Thank you very much. And please drive safely, although you're going to be on the phone. Drive safely. Thank you very much.
Right.
Dr. Anne, over to you.
Thanks, Professor Levak, and also to fellow panelists, and also to those who have tuned in online. So in terms of best practices, for me, I think the issue that we are trying to address is around administrative fatigue, where the extent of overlap between different reporting portfolios and the purposes of the different portfolios or the different reports needs to be addressed. So we are currently working on integration of reporting on research, on engagement, on transformation, even on strategic imperatives. And in that way, being able to extract, like the database that Priscilla and Cornell had been developing for different purposes, reporting for different purposes, so that the inputs that goes into that can be extracted for different purposes. So that is the one. Also, I think in terms of the manner in which the revisioning or reimagining of engagement and the framing of engagement within our institution was to invite individuals across different disciplines, but not only from faculties, but also involving individuals from both the core as well as the PAS or professional administrative and support services side as well, so that there is sharing of expertise and information that does not go according to those binaries. So I think that that is also an element that is, I believe it's a good practice. And then the languaging, when you mentioned languaging, that was the first thing that I had written down, and the humanizing aspect of that languaging, the ethical considerations that goes into our praxis is, I think, a key principle that needs to continue to be embedded and even re-emphasized. Then just in terms of insights, yesterday I made a comment about the funding, and I also heard about the integration. And I think I think it was Professor Morton that mentioned integration was one of the insights that was brought in. But for me, it is a key driver in terms of teaching, learning, research, innovation, that whatever it is that we are taking on in terms of projects needs to be integrated at an undergraduate as well as in postgraduate qualification, so that it does not stand alone or is seen as extra or almost like co-curricular, actually, you know, for some of the students, but is seen as integral in developing the civic agency ultimately, and becoming active citizens within our country. So for me, the integration is at that level, and obviously also then in terms of governance as well as policy provisions. And then also the other element that I found quite interesting was the communication, that the communication should be both ways, and that the information that we have within the institution in relation to the capabilities, the expertise that, and even the projects that are being undertaken, whether it is within the research aspect or engagement aspects, needs to be accessible, and also on the maybe even a forum or a platform where it's structured engagement between the communities, whether it is in terms of civil society or government or industry, but that there's a structured platform where individuals can then have access to that, what is happening in the various areas. And I think this speaks to what Bruce was saying. what our understanding is of the purpose of the university. Because if we do not know what is happening around us, we cannot make informed decisions in terms of which projects it is that we're wanting to participate in. Then future direction, I think this for me, I'm going to put on my transformation hat and say that in terms of engagement, and I've alluded to this yesterday, the transformative imperative, that there needs to be, I suppose, information available, accessible. So future direction would be a monitoring and evaluation framework with indicators where we could then, to some extent, measure the impact of what it is that we do, and that be more uniform in terms of our institutions, so that we can get an idea of what it is that, the impact of what it is that we are implementing as a collective. Thanks, Chair.